Hi, welcome. In today's episode, we are sharing practical guides for mid to senior level managers to level up, to move up to executive level. And I have a very special guest to discuss it. But before I do that, if you are watching the replay, as either on if you're on YouTube, please subscribe, like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, please like the page. If you're on LinkedIn, please follow me, so that the next time we I post content, you'll be able to see it. And I tend to post a lot of useful content, at least based on the feedback I've gotten so far. Okay, and if you're live with us, welcome. We're happy to take your questions and comments, but you need to allow, right wherever you are, you need to allow the app access to your account so that when you do post a comment or a question, it comes up here and we can take it. Awesome. So before I introduce my special guest, let me quickly run the intro. Okay, so now we're getting to the exciting part. I am so chuffed to be introducing Shade Efiong Bassey. Shade and I go way, way back. Shade is the manager of managers of managers. Okay, so she's had over 20 years hands-on experience working through the HR function. And at some point in our careers, our paths crossed, right? And the reason why I picked her in particular for this episode is that we both come from a common heritage of strong leadership development. The organizations in which our paths crossed have produced really awesome leaders, and Shade has led, a lot of that huge impact that these organizations have had in terms of the leaders they've produced, across the sector and in Nigeria and beyond. And so I'm really pleased to have Shade here to share practical tips. I will let her introduce herself in her own words. Welcome, Shade.
Hi, Ladi. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for the great introduction and your very kind words. Okay, so as Ladi said, I've worked for decades. We don't like to put some time into that. So I'm currently a group executive director where I work, and I oversee the human capital management function and a host of other portfolios. So I started my HR career as a generalist, and I've grown through the ranks. I enjoy what I do, and I'm able to add value at the intersection of the business, the customer, and the employee. And this means that I've had worked on several projects and initiatives that have, intersected these three areas. I've been privileged to be part of the lives of hundreds of amazing people, and I've been fortunate to witness their career growth and success. I have hired and through the HR practices, managed hundreds of people throughout the whole HR lifecycle. I'm also a certified life coach, and I have several eclectic interests that have helped me to be more effective in my role.
Awesome introduction. So let's dive right into it. My very first question. Now, okay, so let me just set the context. Of course, if you're watching this, anyone who watches this, the intent is to ensure that, especially for mid to senior level professionals who, I primarily serve, you'll be able to walk away from this session with several practical tips,
Okay.
right? Several
Okay.
practical steps that you can take from today to level up, to move up to the executive level, right? So, my very, very first question is, so what skills and strategies have helped you, Shade, as you've moved up and succeeded? You're now at executive level and have been for a while. So, if I wanted to use it as a template, right, in your own career, what skills and competencies, or what skills and strategies have you used?
All right, great. Thank you, Ladi. So we're going to separate this into two. We're going to look at the skills and then we're going
Yeah,
to look at the strategies.
yeah,
Having said that, these are things that this framework is something that would apply to anyone as well who is embarked on this journey.
hmm,
Um, so I had started, when I started my career, I'd had a noble goal, right?
yeah,
Beginning with the end in mind, if you recall the words of Stephen Covey,
hmm,
and I had a noble goal to leverage world-class HR practices to elevate the lives of Nigerian professionals.
professionals.
I started from recruitment, saying I wanted to be able to make a difference in people's life.
Yeah,
And the qualities therein will naturally steer you in the direction of executive leadership. So
yeah.
now, on practical levels, right, there are three major things
Oh,
that
I'm
are.
sorry to interrupt, Shade. I just want to reinforce before you go on. So this
Mhm,
thing about noble goal, right?
mhm,
I may say it's around mission, right?
mhm.
Um, you can't really make an impact unless you have, and it might change as you go on.
Oh,
But most
yes,
of the people I
certainly.
know who are
Yes,
successful, they have a mission beyond the work
behind this.
day to
Yes,
day. You do
yes.
have to have a lofty goal, a
You
noble
do
goal.
have to have that.
That's what inspires you to go above and beyond. I just wanted to reemphasize that and also talk about that your lofty goal. A lot of the time, you have to pick organizations that are going in the same direction. That's
Precisely.
what makes it really easier. So
Absolutely.
you're not swimming against the current. I
Absolutely.
find, especially at leadership level where so much is required, that it's really hard to show up in the way that you need to show up if you don't believe in the mission. So
Very true.
you have to have coincident missions.
Very true.
Sorry that I digress. So go on,
No,
Shadi.
no, 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 but that's a very powerful point, Ladi. It's very true. And that's so you see, when you're choosing the organization that you're going to synchronize yourself with for a greater part of your life, you're not looking at just money. There are several things, that you have to look at. But I'm sure that we could have many conversations about
I
that.
love
And yes.
that. Yes.
So, we're going back to the
Skills and
building
strategies.
blocks. Yes, that I have. So there are three blocks of skills: your professionalism, your
Hmm,
hard skills,
hmm,
which is where you do the crunch, the numbers. This is where you pay your dues. This is where you just keep slugging,
hmm.
and you're actually working on your operational functions.
Yeah.
And the next set of skills that I leveraged on were my soft skills, or what we call human skills. And
Hmm.
as you level up, generally speaking, you find out that you need more and more of this kind of skills. Maybe because they're called soft skills, so people kind of try to look down on them, but you really shouldn't, because this is where the work is. Don't forget that anything that is routine and can be operationalized can be automated and
Automated.
can be overtaken by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's a
This is
powerful point.
thinking, yes. So it is the thinking skills, the leading the organization, the critical thinking, analytical reasoning, and all that, the emotional intelligence. That is
Yeah,
where the value begins to now show up.
yeah.
So I would like to throw up a couple of concepts within human skills I'd like to
Hmm.
talk about.
Yeah.
Just throw it up anyway. I don't know if we have enough time. We talk about leadership,
Yes.
talk about teamwork, team building, and collaboration. So these were skills that I tried to leverage on, and everybody that has ascended to any level in an organization or any position in life actually leverages on any
I
of these three
agree.
areas.
Yeah.
Then I'd like to bring out emotional intelligence as well,
Hmm.
when we're talking about soft skills. And emotional intelligence is your ability to leverage and manage your emotions to influence positive outcomes in everything that you do.
Yes.
And there are words that will pop up here. I know we don't have time to go into them, but
Uh-huh.
self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, resilience,
Hmm.
um, um, and situational awareness. These are all things that I have leveraged on from time to time at one point or the other, that has also helped me in my role.
Yeah.
Then the last block is attitude. When I started my career, I mean, one of the first things I learned was that, global organizations will say we don't hire for skills, we hire for attitude.
Attitude. Yeah.
Yes, so it's true to an extent. I mean, it's arguable, but it's very true to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
And your ability to learn, your teachability, your ability to be self-driven and exhibit initiative is a great precursor to executive leadership.
Yeah.
Then a very critical thing I want to mention quickly, Ladi, is the ability to identify problems before they come and solve them. So it's not just about solving a problem, but strategically, you're always able to identify weak spots or opportunities within the ecosystem and then prefer solutions that actually
Solution.
address those spots.
Right.
Yes.
There's no point identifying if you will not solve. Yeah.
Yes.
That's one
Yes.
thing I have noticed about leaders. They don't just come to you with the questions. They at
No,
least attempt to answer it a bit.
yes, that's very, very important because at the very top, I mean, there are so many things that are taking up attention. So you're not
Mhm.
just coming to identify something or complain and then expect to dump it in your, dump it in somebody's lap. You have to
Yeah.
come with a solution. And
Mm.
then the strategies that I also employed, because I realized that at a point I needed to level up myself. So I acquired management skills. I went for an executive MBA program with
Mm-hmm.
Lagos Business School, the Pan
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic University. I
Mm-hmm.
also did a bit in upskilling myself with leadership,
Yeah.
governance, and I also availed myself of several coaches um, and mentors. And
Yeah,
then,
I might have to reemphasize that point. You need coaches and
yeah,
you need mentors. Nobody gets there without help. You do need help, right?
yes,
And so
yes.
typically I would say around mentorship and around coaching. For mentorship, you look for who you would like to be, right? That's one good rule of thumb. Or look
Mhm.
for who's going where you're going,
Exactly.
right? So it doesn't have to, it's not only up, you can also have peer mentors. In fact, these
Yes,
days, I even have people who are younger than me or who are not as experienced as me,
certainly.
who are mentors as well. But you
Yes,
do need mentorship and you
yes,
need coaching. Coaching is a little more formal, but you need
yes,
help. Yeah.
yes. It's interesting that you say that, Ladi, because I also have um, mentors, several mentors that are much younger of the millennial generation.
Yes.
In HR, you're obviously working with different generations. And in my organization, we have up to 4 generations, 3 generations. So I've also had to level down as well as leveling up, to be able to understand the different nuances
Mhm.
of relationship. Yes. So it's
Mhm.
interesting you mentioned that. Okay.
Very, 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 very important. Okay, so we've looked at your skills and strategies. What served you well, right? Um, Next, I'd like us to now look at other people. So, looking at all, and I know, Shade, that you have hired and managed many across organizations, right? So, looking at all the managers you've worked with, what differentiates those who move up to executive level from the others? Let me just add a little more context. Now, you know
Mhm.
what the thing is now? Everybody joins. At some point, you need line managers. So, quite a few people move into line management, right? Of those people, a smaller group then moves up to senior management. If we were just working roughly with numbers, just for the sake of this conversation, I would say if 100 people joined, of them, maybe 40 would become line managers. Of those 40, maybe another 10 would become like really senior management. Only about 5 make it to executive level. So that top 5, what differentiates them from all the others?
Mm. I would put top of the list leadership and
Okay.
influence, right?
Okay.
So we're assuming that in terms of competence, right, we have equal levels of competence. So let's
Yeah.
put that aside.
Yeah.
But the major thing I would look at, what I would point out, would be leadership.
Okay.
And let me explain. right? Leadership is not ogahood. It's not being an oga. Leadership is influence. Leadership is your ability to drive performance, drive results according to the objectives, and even going beyond through people.
Yeah,
Now, this is a lot of investment in the lives of the people that you're influencing. You know, there's a
absolutely.
whole body of knowledge around how you inspire, how you inspire people to
And
deliver.
how you motivate, yeah.
Yes, and how you motivate them. So leadership, I would put at top of the top burner. I would also
So
take.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So
No, go
right
ahead.
there, right, what you said about, yes, being able to drive performance through people, and more importantly, the investment, right, that is required to build those relationships to get people to deliver. I just wanted to give the example. So I mean, I used to struggle with it a bit, but if I just look back at some of the leaders I've worked with, some of the people that inspired me the most, right? One, were able to paint like really clear visions. I mean, I've had leaders that could make you go to war, yeah, with them. But the other thing is, they were really interested in you as a person, you, your family, how you were feeling. They were always willing to accommodate the fact that you're human, right? While still, driving you back towards the work. And I find that in conversations I've had with other people, you hear things like, he came to my wedding, or when I was ill, she did this, or so it's not just work, is what I'm trying to emphasize.
Yes,
It's life, kind of
yes,
doing life together.
yes, it is. It is, and it's interesting that you would talk about being able to communicate vision. That's very true.
Mm.
The inspirational leader or the transformational leader, transformational leadership, which is which is a good precursor to executive management, actually understands where we are going and is able to steer the ship there. I've had a leader who you you're you're always, you're everything you're doing is an adventure. There's always something to
Yeah,
look forward to, no
yeah,
matter what the stress is, no matter what is going on. Your eyes are on that goal. That
yeah.
vision is just resonating, and you're working towards that.
Yes, yes.
So I would say leadership is one. I would I would also pick the differentiating factors, right? I
Yes.
would also pick the ability to align and influence culture and values positively.
Okay.
Now, Lou Gessner, former IBM CEO, had said that culture isn't part of the game of business of management, it is the game.
Mhm.
And we have also heard, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this saying that culture trumps, or culture eats strategy
It's
for
strategy
breakfast.
for breakfast. Yeah.
So the people who have differentiated themselves and who have been able to move are people who understand the culture and the values
Yeah.
of the times they're in, of the organization.
Yeah.
And even where there are certain things that need to be done better or differently, they're able to influence it, they're able to align with it. They're not at dissonance with it, right? It's not an adversarial relationship, it's a
Hmm.
supportive and growth oriented relationship.
Hmm.
So another top burner in differentiation would be people who are able to interpret strategic direction. We talked about vision,
Yeah.
and they're able to acquire the skills required to function, required to make a difference ahead of the curve. They're visionary, they see into the future, right? They're futurists. And actually, one of the key skills or requirements of success for anyone today is the
Hmm.
ability to see the future, is the ability to create the future, to predict it, to understand the trajectory of
Yeah.
the future. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So they're able to do that. Another thing I'll pick on is they accept leadership opportunities. Now, again, this is much harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
we at times we come across, and I'm speaking generally, right? That you come across people who say, well, this project you're giving me isn't in my job description. I'm not getting recognition for it. I'm not getting paid extra. I have to work overnight to deliver it. I have to work on weekends. I have to give up my holidays.
Yeah.
If you're going to grow to executive leadership, you have to take those leadership opportunities. And they usually come outside of the main work that you do. But that
Yes.
is what gives you more experience.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it gives you more experience across, the organization.
Mm.
Do you want
You're
me to?
so right. You're so right.
Mhm.
Typically, these assignments, in fact, one of the things I tell people when we talk about this is it's not just accept. In fact, you have to look for, right? You have
Mhm.
to have your eye on
True.
um,
True.
where the tough, and nobody pulls you up, right, to give you an easy problem. We solve it. Typically, the opportunities you will get are the thorny ones, the ones
Mhm.
that nobody else wants,
Mhm.
right? Or the ones that are so huge, you can't be afraid of failure. For instance, you have to be willing to take the chance and then just give it your best, fail or succeed. Of course, we don't say I mean intend to fail, but you know what I mean. Just talking to people generally, and the reason why I'm re-emphasizing this is we are talking to people who are looking at I want to go through the ranks in this particular organization internally. You do have to look for the problems that are hard to solve, or be at least in tune enough with the executive to understand where the challenges are and to step up to help to solve those problems. I just wanted to re-emphasize that, because funny enough, it really is a point of failure for many people.
It is. It is. It is. You're right, Ladi. And another thing I want to point out that's a point of failure for there's a bit of an echo. Another thing I want to point out that's a point of failure for a lot of people is ownership. Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Is ownership. So you find that a busy executive, a top executive, wants leaders, right, who would take problems or who would take functional areas
Mhm.
or who would take projects and just run with it
And
and
own
own
them.
it from end to end.
Yes.
You don't want someone who is coming back to you all the time with, you
So should
know,
I go left?
seeking for permission.
We
Yes,
have reached junction now.
yes, seeking for permission to, carry out some activities.
Some
But the
activities, yeah.
fulcrum of all this, the base of all this, is competence, which we had already
Yes.
talked about. Your
Yes.
technical competence must be exceptional.
Yes, yes. And a lot of people kind of default to that. Let me go and ask the organ now, because
Yes,
again, fear of failure.
because
So
of
you
the
hear
fear.
things like, but when I asked so and so, it's
Exactly,
because they said it, that's why I did it.
exactly,
Therefore, it's this fault. You actually have to be willing to, as much as you want to own the success, you must be willing to own the failure too. That's
exactly,
leadership.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly.
Okay, so we've looked at, key differentiators. So if you looked at a group of managers now, right, just looking at them, it would be the person who's visionary, who not only thinks in terms of the future and can see opportunities, but is able to take those and turn around and paint the vision for other people and carry
Yeah.
them along. That's one. You would see someone who looks for opportunities to add value, even when it's at great cost outside their immediate portfolio. You would see someone who's willing to invest in people and build relationships that then drive superior performance. And what we've just said now, you would see someone who's able to take ownership from end to end, and
Hmm.
kind of doesn't let the fear of failure to stop them from stepping up to opportunities. Okay,
Hmm.
great. And that's quite a I mean, it's not an exhaustive list, but I think we've
Yes,
touched, the most important key points. If one
yes,
was looking at who's going to become an executive,
yes,
of all these people.
yes. And let me interject here, Ladi. There are also things that you do not do. So I always like to look at, play the devil's advocate. I always like to look at both perspectives. So these are
Yes.
things that differentiate them. The things that, anyone aspiring to executive leadership should not exhibit: low emotional intelligence.
What does that look like in practical terms?
It means that you lack situational awareness, you lack intelligence about the people that you're working with. You don't know what is driving you don't understand the team dynamics because you're working with people. You don't understand how to get the best performance from your people, and you are not able to regulate
Own emotions.
your own emotions, your own behavior to create the kind of positive impacts that is required. So you rule with FFF, you rule with fear, force, and there's another one. And instead of leading by inspiration, but
Mm.
you decide you rule, then you cannot be resistant to change. You cannot say, "Oh, I'm tired
Yes.
of time. Something is changing."
Yes.
If we got our strategy right, we wouldn't be changing course. Why we're changing
Yes.
course midstream?
Oh, yes.
We're moving the goalposts.
Wow, Shade, you've
Mhm.
just touched on. I guess this is resonating with me so much.
So,
Not just
so
because I've kind of, been in leadership teams, but because from the consulting side, right? At almost every organization I've gone into to make a change, you see that resistance, right? It's amazing how a lot of it comes from the people who are supposed to be driving change. The reason
exactly,
why you're a leader is being able to lead change, right? And so if you yourself are change resistant, then who's going to bring you up to where the stakes are much
exactly,
higher?
exactly. If
Absolutely,
you're
that's such a key
yes,
point.
if you're resistant to change, you're going to drown in that change. Another three other things they don't do. I really have to mention this is
Mhm.
they're not inflexible and holding
They're
on
not.
to
Say that again.
inflexible,
Inflatable.
inflexible,
Oh, inflexible. Okay.
inflexible and holding on to self-limiting mindsets.
Mhm.
So you have a mindset that has already said, this is how we're going to do things. It is my way or the highway, or it
I
is my way, and you don't know what you're doing. So you can't be like that.
Mhm.
You also do not take criticism negatively, right? You don't take feedback. Let me use that word. You don't take feedback as criticism. There's something we call a doom loop. You're just in that loop of anything anybody says that questions the way you're doing things or that suggests alternative measures is negative, is criticism,
Personal.
and you don't want to hear about it.
Mm.
And very important, laddie, because as you ascend up the ladder, there are many policies, decisions, that are taken that may not, be favorable for you.
Yeah.
There's feedback that you get. There are projects that you've worked on that are asked. There are budgets that you've pushed that are, overturned. There's so many things that you do, as you are doing your best to contribute to the organization. And at times, these things are just set aside. You do not go in with a victim's mentality. Once you take things personal, to you, your person, once you have that hubris or ego, you're just sliding farther away from executive leadership.
That's so important. um I'll quickly share one of my experiences and where I learned. So generally I'm a very I like change, right? But I have been in a situation in an organization where, and leadership is a boundary position. You are part of leadership, the them, right?
Hmm.
And so you're making these policies, you're having to interpret them and carry people along, and people will come at you. You people have, right? So you have to defend. Even when at the time you were having the conversation in the leadership team, you resisted, you didn't agree. But if you guys come to a consensus or a decision is made, it then becomes your decision as well. It's
Hmm.
unacceptable,
It
right?
is.
To then go to the rest of the team and say, well, they decided. I opposed it to, as per you're the good guy, right? And
Exactly.
whatever. What happens, and a lot of people fall into that trap because they're
They
trying to,
do.
quote unquote, carry their people along. But what happens is that sooner or later it filters, right? And then first of all, you're destroying the whole leadership effectiveness across the organization by doing that. But more importantly, can you be trusted? It filters. So you do have to. Oh, we have a comment. So let me just quickly take it. Vincent says, Shade, please elaborate on what not to do within an organization to attain executive leadership. Okay, so that's what we're actually talking about, and we will. I'll let Shade answer. Right. I just want to finish this point about you can't, in trying to carry your team along, distance yourself from collectively taken leader, or from what has become the leadership decision. That's one. The other negative loop I fell into at this point, and I learned from that, was so there were a few other leaders that didn't quite agree with what the leader was doing. And then you keep having these conversations that kind of reinforce the negativity. You can fall into the trap of talking about what's wrong with this organization so much that it clouds your view and begins to affect your own attitude and your own performance. You do need to distance yourself from those types of conversations. I'll stop and let, because we're here to listen to Shade, not me, right? So, Shade, let's keep talking about what not to do.
Okay, so we talked about low emotional intelligence. I'd
Yeah,
like to lead off from what you said, Ladi. When decisions are taken, right, and you have to be part of the decisions as you have explained so clearly, those decisions at times fail, right?
yeah,
So whatever decision has been taken, whatever initiative is embarked on can fail. Now, what happens is you hear, I told you so, I told you so. You see, I told them, oh, you see, the has failed because they did not listen to me. So what you are trying to do in that instance is you're trying to score points with your team,
him.
right? Oh, he said it, so they didn't listen to him. You're already creating a dichotomy,
Yes,
right? So when failure, because failure is learning, it's part of learning, it's not failure. I mean, my group MD would always say that you learn, and then you move on. So when you learn from things, you own it with everybody. So plus the person that had the weightiest opinion in that matter, plus everyone else, you, even if you're the loudest dissenter, you all own the failure. You said, oh well, there are things we could have done better. This is all a learning opportunity. What are we learning from this? You turn it into a learning discussion with your people, and
yes,
then you move on from there.
yes,
I talked about being inflexible,
yes,
not wanting to change, and having the victim's mentality.
yes.
Um, I don't know, Vincent, are you satisfied with the answers, or do you want us to?
Well, we'll wait for him to respond.
Okay.
But whilst we're waiting for Vincent to respond, let's move to the next question. Sorry, let me find it. Okay, so we've kind of covered in having this conversation, we've kind of spoken to challenges, right? So let's now drill down to practical steps, which is where you were going to before. So, mid-level manager wanting to move to senior level executive, what practical steps can one take?
All right. So the foundation starts with you, right? Before you build a house, you have to have a plan. So many times people don't have a clear and definite career plan. They don't have a development plan for themselves. Your plan has to align with what the organization is doing. So it starts with you, and I would first of all talk about what you do to prepare yourself, because you're actually proceeding on, it's an
Journey.
adventure. It's an
Mhm,
adventure.
mhm.
So it's a long journey. It's a mega journey.
Yes,
So you have to allocate resources and support toward your personal life. Your we talk about work-life balance or
yes,
work-life integration, depending
mhm,
on what you're doing and where you're at. Both theories apply. And you organize your home, your family support to say, okay, I'm going to I'm trying to build this, so I need your support and all that. I
Yes.
remember when we were running the executive MBA program, they actually had to reach out to spouses, family to say, look, this person is going to have a lot of divided attention for the next 24 months. So we really need your cooperation. Then you have to give attention to your wellness and well-being. You have to take care of your health
Yes.
because you need high level of energy to be able to execute a lot of these strategies. It's not
Absolutely.
easy to lead, to lead diverse teams. You are involved in every emotion of each of the people that is working with you.
Yeah.
So now I'm just going to run through a series of other practical steps. So
Okay.
we've talked about competence and the building blocks that I had talked about earlier.
Yes.
You have to consciously and deliberately continue to develop strategic insights into
Mhm.
your organization and the industry. So you don't exist in a vacuum. So what's the place of your organization in the industry? Where are you going? Um, you have to understand the skills that for the next level and prepare for them. I've had cause to work with or coach, someone who has consistently grown, everywhere he's found himself by doing just that. He studies what's happening, studies the direction, studies what the bigger organizations in that industry, what they're doing, the steps they're taking. He prepares himself for that. And by the time his organization is retooling to say, okay, this is where we're going, he's already saying, here I am, I'm fit for this role. And that's how he has grown. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me pause, please. Just that sentence you made, that here I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about it just a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to quickly give you feedback. Vincent says, I'm satisfied. Thank you. However,
Okay.
thanks to both of you. I've learned a lot on core competence of an executive leader. He said he actually wrote 2 pages. Awesome, Vincent. I'm glad you
Wow.
found it useful. Right. And then Tini on Facebook says hi. All right.
Oh.
So we were talking. I was going to say that here I am. You
Mm-hmm.
actually have to step up.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders are not shrinking violets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 things. You have to advocate for yourself, not in a pushy, I'm the only one that can do it, but as Shade said it, here I am, right? I've put in the work to understand what's needed and I've built that competence. You actually, because yes, the ideal thing is, oh, maybe you expect that HR and leadership, they're looking for superstars. But in reality, right, we're running this business. The world is changing. You want allies to step up and say, here I am, this one, I can do it. So you are not, I don't know, I'm going on about this because there's such a strong mindset of, oh, if you work hard and you're honest and you stay in your corner, the opportunity will come. It's not true. You have to step up. All right. So let's go back, Shade, to your practical tips.
Yes. Thank you, Ladi. In fact, I had that as the last point,
Okay.
raising your hand. To say I'm able to do this, and the skills you need for that are confidence, able to communicate with clarity, and vision, communicate concisely, and the other things that we've already talked about being good at your job. So I have several steps here. I'm just trying to pick out the most important ones.
Okay.
I talked about understanding your skills. All right. I would say that you have to invest in your self development. So you have to continue to read,
Yes, that's key.
continue to read. It's not easy, always reading. Let me tell you something, right? By virtue of our culture or society, there's a mentality that, oh, once I have gone through university, I've got my first job, I've become a manager, I've been promoted, I've made it. So there's a kind of mental slowing down. But no, you actually need to flip it. That is when you actually need to rev up. In my days, they used to NYC was now your suffering continues. It's actually now your learning has just started. Right.
Yes.
So you have to continue to read, network, establish relationship currency within your organization
Yes.
and in the industry. And I'd
Yes.
like to speak to advocacy, right? People who are leveling up or people who, have been able to get to executive leadership position, have advocates within the organization.
Yes.
Now, your advocate is not only in the boardroom. So I know people are familiar with those. Somebody's going to speak for you in the boardroom. It's not just the boardroom. That's what we need to understand. You
Mm-hmm.
have advocates, in the
Across
canteen.
board, really.
You have advocates in the hallway. You have silent influencers that are watching you that will advocate for you, whenever decisions or discussions are being made about talent.
That is
So
so
you have
true.
to, so the extent to which you are able to communicate your competence across the organization is the level to which your advocates will advocate for you.
Yeah, yeah.
You're going
I,
to say
I just
something.
wanted to just pitch in, interrupt there, and just say, you're so right. It's what do people say about you? What experience are your colleagues across board having of you? It's curious how odd some of these conversations can be. And please, this is not about people liking you.
No,
Likability is great, right? But that's not it. I've had people, say, look, if you want to get this thing done, use this person. I mean, I don't particularly like him, but if you want to get the work done, right, use him. He's great at doing this, as an example. Which is not to say people tend to work more easily with people that they like, but leaders often fall into the trap of likability driving, because as a leader you do have to make hard decisions, so you cannot be driven by likability, but you must be aware that people tend to enjoy working with, there's a balance with people that they like. So this advocacy isn't around, oh, he's such a nice man or she's such a nice lady. Is she can get the job done, she has what it takes, she knows, she understands the context. Let me pause and take this comment and then we'll continue. Just a minute. Um, Sorry. Okay, so Tenny says, I'm a bit worried about thriving with these unconventional principles of leadership, ethics in a largely regimented environment like the civil service. Can we talk about that a bit? Um, Although I will freely admit that I haven't had much experience working with civil service. Government is just something, I have, even as projects, I've only done, well, actually, I've done a major government project, right? Um, and what was driving that was that they needed to change something quickly, right? And so it was pain that made people quickly adjust. But if we're looking at, I don't know if Shade has, a few tips.
well, I haven't worked with the civil service, but I would say that professionalism and competence is valued in any space.
Mhm.
And we have very distinguished professionals and highly competent people in the civil service. So I think that if you focus in those areas and apply all these principles, which are very simple. I mean, forget the fancy names. Forget, they're not so unconventional. They're just day to day simple practices. I think that where you would have issues with the civil service, as you would with any community or entity, is where you get involved in the back talk
Yeah.
and in the eye service, in the impressions management, in the lobbying. Okay, I'm lobbying because I want to get a favor. I like you, so you like me back. I think when you operate at that level only, you would have, you would find, you would get a lot of issues. But yes, I would freely admit that there are organizations, and not just the civil service. You have mature organizations that have well established
Very
practices.
hierarchical. Yeah.
Yes, very hierarchical, highly established practices, and there's almost nothing you can do but conform. And remember, Ladi had said earlier, there's actually a funnel, right? So not everybody that starts out, is going to get to
There. Yeah.
that position.
Yeah.
But remember, we had talked about your noble goal at the beginning. So your
Mhm.
noble goal is not to become this or that in an organization. Your noble goal is the value, the
The
purpose, the
impact.
mission, the impact that you are driving for, and that is what will take you,
Mhm.
to take you places.
Absolutely, Shadi. Teni, I'd also like to add that whatever the organization, civil service, private organization, church, not for profit, I think the biggest thing anybody at any level will have, but especially at leadership, is just that situational awareness, right? Having the intelligence to understand what's really important to the people leading this organization. What does this organization, if you are led by the mission that is leading the leader, you're kind of likely, right, to be able to tailor your activities. So no matter how upside down a place is, there's what the people who own the organization, even if it's government, there's the result that you must deliver, right?
Yeah.
And there's what's important. That leader himself will be on the chopping block if he cannot deliver it.
Yes.
If you can navigate to that, typically you tend to get these um, opportunities. And then,
Opportunity.
particularly for civil service, I have found that the thing I like about some of the civil service leaders, right, that I have observed is how they keep to competence, and they keep to understanding what needs to be done, and they keep doing it. And suddenly, like 20 years later, you just find they're still there. They've weathered all the storm of the different appointees coming in and going out because they stick to what's important,
Mhm.
right? Is that intelligence to understand what's really important? Okay, so Teni says yes. I hope we've been able to answer your question satisfactorily, Teni. All right. So, Shade, we've had a fantastic conversation. You know, we were last talking about practical steps to level up, and we've shared quite a few. Now, my next question was going to be what help does one need? But we've kind of covered that, right? You do need to talk to your people. That is your own network. Just a minute. Let me just take this comment. Okay, yes, Tenny says yes, we've answered that question. Fantastic.
Great.
All right. So, what help does one need? And we've kind of covered that. You spoke about, you know, in your life. That's not just not at work. The people who will support you. What kind of you need to quickly recognize what kind of support and who will be required to sacrifice, right, for you to meet this your goal. You need to quickly identify them, discuss the situation
Yeah.
with them, so that
Yeah.
you people you are in sync, right? You need to, of course, we've spoken about mentors and coaches. We've spoken about investment in self-development, right? Those are some of the some of the key things you will need. And we've spoken about building um building a network of advocates by your reputation and by your actions across the organization, and not just within the organization, even across the industry. One of the things I found very useful for me is, especially when you know you're working with these people a lot of the time, you do have to build those relationships so that you can get things done much more quickly. All right, so we will wrap up now, right? And before we wrap up, I'm sorry, I can't resist. I have to ask this question, Shadi. So we've spoken about a lot about step up, raise your hand, do the hard task that no one else wants to do. So let's say I'm a manager and I've been watching this thing now, and I decide today is my mission. I want to step up. Where do I find these opportunities? How does one find them, and how does one engage them?
Great, Ladi. This is going to go back to Temi's question. How do you find and engage opportunities? It's actually dependent on the organization. So some organizations have established processes and you just have to follow through with that.
Mhm.
However, there are many lateral opportunities or horizontal moves that you can make in organization that will help you achieve, vertical growth. So I was talking to someone the other day, not in my organization, someone someone I just met, and he shared how he looked at he had access, it's a mature organization,
Mhm.
and looked at organogram
Mhm.
of the organization, and was able to pinpoint where there were opportunities that he could begin to prepare for and begin to move to, and that
Yeah.
was what he did. And then you also have opportunities in your own department. I already said so, or across in other departments. At times you have to do some other jobs. If there's a limit where you are, you can actually move, some other.
Laterally. Yeah.
Yes, and then begin to get experience, and you're growing up toward that. During performance evaluation sessions
Yeah.
with your leader, or discussions with your managers, or your executives, you are asking, okay, so what are the opportunities? What are the plans? Where are we going? Where's the organization going? Where do you think I can fit in? What else do I need to do? What are my shortcomings? What are my strengths? So you kind of have that kind of those conversations.
Yeah.
And then where you're not constrained, right? I think it's Eleanor Roosevelt that said it, that the best way to predict your future is to create it. There
Create
are
it.
several, trust me, several opportunities for growth via inefficiencies or via improvements in your where you are in your organization.
Yes.
You have to find them, and then you have developed competencies. You have to be able to make a case. Use your analytical skills to make a case to say, look, this is what we could be doing here. Trust me, everybody's looking for someone to give more work to. I mean,
Yes.
like I said that earlier,
I can
you're looking
attest
for
to that.
someone to give there are jobs that nobody owns, and
Yes.
things that's falling through the cracks.
Yes.
Take up those things. Eventually, that those opportunities will come, and then that is how you're establishing your pedigree, across
Yes.
the organization.
Absolutely. I agree. That's such a great point. And as you were talking, something quickly struck my mind. So you do have to really, really understand. This is where you come up from your own particular position, even from your function, to understand this organization. Where is our place in the market, right? What's
Exactly,
our strategy? Where is the market itself going? What have
exactly,
we set out to do this year?
exactly.
Where are the immediately you start to look at this, even your organizational strategy, you begin to see, we have to do this. They've set up this initiative. Here's where, and I know there's one guy that I know who kept on, pitching for a place on a specific initiative team, because he said, when I was asking also, why do you want, he said, this is going to affect the whole organization, how we do things here. I want to be in the middle of it so that I understand. That kind of, intelligence. Not, you have to step up higher from your own place, right? And start to look at it from an organizational point of view, from a market. But imagine the value you would drive if your CEO understands that you're thinking kind of the way he's thinking, where are we going? Where's
Yes,
the market going? That kind of thing.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's essentially it. Okay, fantastic. Shade, thank you. This has been a great talk. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and you've helped to refresh my thinking, around a couple of things. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to wrap up now, right? Do you have one final tip you want to leave with people who are watching us, and then we
Yes,
wind down?
yes. I would say again, find purpose, find meaning in everything you're doing. Know that you're illimitable. Your purpose and your meaning is what is going to give you the shock absorbers, because it is a bumpy ride. It is a really bumpy ride to the top. And it's a bumpy ride, staying there. There's quite a bit of course correcting and all that you're doing.
Mhm.
So the meaning is what's going to give you that shock absorber. And there is nothing you cannot achieve if you set your mind to it and believe. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Shade. So, as I wrap up, remember, if you're watching on Facebook, like the page. If you're watching on YouTube, please, YouTube people, my YouTube people tend to come after the program. When you watch it, please subscribe. I'm looking for people on that channel to subscribe. If you're watching on LinkedIn, please go ahead and connect to me. And Shade is Fola Shade Efiong Bassey on LinkedIn. Find her, follow her. You get a lot more content. If you're watching this as a replay, if you have any specific questions, please go ahead and leave them in the comments. I do come back from time to time to this broadcast and check through and answer. All right. So yeah, awesome. We have a lot of, so let me share, Shade. You sorry. Tenny says thank you, that she has learned a lot in this session. Thank you, Tenny, for joining us. I really appreciate. NS says thank you both. I learned a lot in the session. And I thank you for joining us.
Thank you
Um,
very
and
much.
Shegun says, I saw myself in everything you have said today. Thanks, Shade. So thank you all for joining. I mean, this is why we do it, so that people can, we're grateful for the feedback. We want to know people are listening and are learning. Thank you, Shade.
Thank
Um,
you, Kelly.
don't
Thank you
worry,
for having me
I'll
on your
still
show.
call you back. I'm
It's
contemplating
my
doing
pleasure.
I'm contemplating, collaborating to do an actual practical coaching program, right? For mid to senior level leaders who are looking for someone to hold their hand, help them create a strategy and walk them through it. And Shada and I will talk a little bit about it, and then I'll come back with an announcement. So thank you all for joining, and
Thank
see you
you.
next week.
Thank you.